Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to this afternoon's webinar for Sage 50 Accounts. We're looking at a topic that we haven't run for quite some time. It's never really proved popular, this particular session, so welcome along. Hope you do find it useful. But it's all about deleting records. So we run a series of these on the various different areas, such as clearing your audit trail. Laura covers things like deleting customers and suppliers, nominal bank. She also covers invoices, quotes, and orders. So probably the least commonly attended sessions of those is deleting stock transactions and product records. It's one of those, again, it's an optional task, and we'll be running through that process in today's session so you can hopefully fully understand it and see whether it's something that you want to do or not. Right, a little bit of housekeeping just before we get stuck in though. So as normal, you don't need a microphone. If you've got one, you've enabled it, you'll find it's muted. You can't unmute yourself during the session. So just as usual, any questions that you might have for me today, pop them in the questions panel. Just click that little speech bubble icon. It's on the toolbar down the right-hand side of your screen. It'll expand the panel. You'll be able to type in that box in the bottom right-hand corner then. So questions, comments, pop them in there. Remember to click send, otherwise I don't see them. And if anyone wants a copy of today's slides, those are available to download as well. Usual two versions, the full color version and also what we term the print-friendly version. So if you do like to print them out, that's the one to go for. It'll save you a toner cartridge here and there or an ink cartridge. If you want the detailed steps on actually running these tasks that we're looking at today, then you will find that sort of step-by-step information within our help center. Nice and easy to find. As usual, this session is being recorded. A link to the recording will be included on your follow-up email, along with a link to our registration page and to our recordings page. Live sessions, currently they run up to the end of March. That includes our latest digital badge series, which will look at invoicing. So I think there are 6 different topics for that one, plus the quiz sessions. So if you are looking to earn your next digital badge, it's a brand new series of webinars, that one, then do get yourself signed up. Right, this is what we're covering today. So this is our agenda. So first of all, why clear stock transactions and delete records? So a little bit of an overview and an introduction to that. We look at the process of manually deleting records. How can you do that? Clearing stock transactions, we'll look at deleting product records, so via the wizard, as opposed to doing them manually. We'll pick up on why you can't delete records. So if you try and you get that message, there can be, I think it's 5 different reasons it can identify. So we'll be covering that in detail. Not all of them will be applicable to everyone. Some areas of the software you might not use, some you might be on the likes of a lower level of the software, not have access to some areas. So things like purchase orders, sales orders will not be relevant to. But we're going to look at alternatives to deleting records as well. So using the inactive records option, which I think Monday next week, we've got a dedicated webinar for. But we're going to touch on that today and show you how you can flag them as being inactive without actually deleting it. So it's a great alternative, either if you don't want to delete or maybe you're not in a position to get rid of them. And then just right at the end, we'll open up to questions. And if there are any, I'll try and pick those up as well. Carol, you mentioned is there a subtitles option for the webinar? There's not for the interface I'm in at the moment. We are trialing that with the new interface. A little bit of difficulty with trialing that at the moment. Keeps going back and forward, so sometimes you'll be on a session where they are available. However, the recordings, we pop them on YouTube afterwards, and obviously YouTube will automatically generate the captions for you. So if you do want to go down that route instead. Right, okay, so let's start with a little bit of background. So why clear stock transactions and delete records? Well, first of all, and I always emphasize this just before we get stuck in, it is an optional task. It's not something that you have to do. There is a recommended limit for the number of product and service records that you do have set up, which is 20,000. I don't think I've come across anyone anywhere near that, but it is, obviously it's possible, but it is just a recommended limit. It's not a hard limit. So if you hit 20,000, it's not just going to stop there and then, but it will give you warnings as you approach it. If you want to find out how many you've got, just a case of going into help and about, and in the records section within there, it will actually list the product records, and also it actually lists how many are active as well, as opposed to total records, which would include the inactive records. So I haven't got any flagged at the moment. So you can see both of mine are the same, but it's not many, that one. So 20,000, as I say, recommended limits. If you've got the data management option switched on, which you may have seen in other areas, it will start as you sort of approach that. So I think when you get within 20% of that, so you hit 80% of the recommended limit, you'll start getting messages about maybe having a bit think about getting rid of records, but there isn't a hard limit. Now, the idea of removing all the transactions and records that you no longer need from your live company, it just helps to ensure your software runs efficiently. I'm sure even with a handful of transactions like I've got, it's going to be that little bit slower compared to having next to nothing. So the more data you have, the longer processes are potentially going to take. Even though I see some massive data sets and, assuming you've got the hardware to support that, etc., still runs reports really quickly. But yeah, it's going to run that bit more efficiently the less information you have. So processing may just be that bit quicker. Reporting faster because there's less information to filter through. You check data. Obviously, the less data you have, the quicker it's going to be to check that. Your backups will be smaller and therefore take less time to complete. So yes, there are advantages, but obviously disadvantages. You're removing sort of data, I suppose. So you're removing old records. But if you're in that position where you think, why, well, product records, particularly if you work in like clothing and things like that, where you've got seasons and things like that, where you think, well, actually, we don't sell that product anymore. It just clutters up your list. Similar to customers, the customers have gone bust. You're not going to deal with them anymore, so you might want to just think, I'll get rid of that record. So getting rid of stock transactions and product records, pretty much the same. So it's similar to sort of clearing your audit trail, getting rid of old records. Right, now, as far as deleting records is concerned, I'm going to show you what it would look like doing it manually first of all. So obviously there are 3 record types in Sage 50, or 2 if you're on the Essentials level or the standard level of Sage 50. If you're on Professional, you gain a product type called a service item, which is not really any different to a non-stock item, to be quite honest. But there are 3 types, so we'll look at sort of deleting those. Non-stock and service items, you can't record, it doesn't record stock levels against any of those. So generally speaking, you're probably just going to be able to highlight those and delete them. There are other limitations, of course, but the main one that prevents you from removing records is the fact that you've got items in stock or you've got stock transactions. So non-stock, service item, don't have those. So generally, you should just be able to delete them. There are other reasons why you might not be able to, but they're the common ones. Now, to actually delete them manually, you've got a number of options. And if you're doing it manually, it would just be a case of within your products and services list, you selecting the records that you're after or that you want to get rid of, and then you click delete. So we'll run through that in a moment. Now, I've put some tips on for selecting records. So there's a number of ways you can make your selection. Yes, we're going to look at the wizard a little bit later on, so it'll identify the records that can be deleted, but you might want to just go through it manually. So let's look at that first of all. So I'll share my screen. And we'll open products and services. So the first one I've got at the top here, this is, I flagged it as a stock item, so I can tell the item type, by going into it, and it says item type at the top, stock. Now I can see in stock, it's got nothing. And if I have a look at the activity, you can see there's nothing on there either. So largely speaking, assuming it meets all the criteria, I could highlight that, and at the top, I can click delete. So are you sure? I'll click yes to that prompt, and that's it gone. Now, if I try and do that with a stock item, so a stock record, I'll just go into it. So you can see it's a stock item, grayed out because we've now posted transactions against it. I can see there's some activity there as well. So looking at the main sort of screen, we've got one in stock. So unless it says 0, you've got something in stock. You could even have a negative. But if I highlight that one and try to just click delete at the top, are you sure? I click yes to that, and I get this message. You're probably going to get this quite a bit. So it gives me the possible reasons. We'll be picking up on those a little bit later on. But basically, it's telling me 1 and 2 items still in stock, and in this case, stock code still has transactions. Now it lists them every time. It's not specific as it is for some other areas of the software where it will, it might only list options 1 and 4, for instance. It will just give you that standard message each time. So you're going to get that when you're in a position where you can't just simply delete a record. Now, if it's a non-stock item, so I'll go into this one, and it tells me non-stock, which means doesn't record any movement in or out, doesn't record stock levels against this one. So we know we definitely got nothing in stock. And because it's non-stock, it doesn't record any activity against that. So for that one, I should just be able to highlight it, click delete. And again, it's gone from the list. And the same would go for product record. Sorry, a record which is flagged as a service. Again, doesn't record any activity. And in the details, you can see, because there's no activity, there's 0 in stock. We'll just close out of that one, and we should be able to delete that one as well. Now, as for, obviously that's just on a single record at a time basis. If you've got multiple records, obviously you can just go down and you can make your selection. So highlighting the ones that you want to get rid of, that's one way of highlighting them before you click delete. If you find that you can't do that, so you can't just randomly click and it highlight it, it'll be to do with what we term your list selection style. Now you'll find that setting by going into Tools, Options, and on the Environment tab, you've got these 2 options here. So currently set up with what we term the Sage selection style. So the Sage selection style is when you click onto something, it highlights it. If you click it again, it takes the highlight off. So it's like almost like an on-off switch. If we switch to the Windows selection style, just OK that. I'm sure some of you will have come across this before, maybe in other webinars. And this method, if we highlight a record, doesn't matter which one, and then if I just randomly click, you'll see the highlight just follows me around. And that's what we term the Windows selection style. Now, if you want to select multiple records when you're set up in this way, you can do one of 2 things. If you want to highlight a, let's say from component 1 down to this where it says correction fluid. If I hold down the Shift key, with that first one highlighted, if I hold down the Shift key and click onto correction fluid, it highlights everything essentially in that range. Then if I just click back to component 1, you'll see it removes all the other highlights and just highlights what I've just clicked on. So you need to be a little bit careful if you're spending a little bit of time highlighting records. The other way you can select records and highlight them is to hold down your Control key. Now, if I hold down the Control key, with that held down, I can just click onto random records there and it'll highlight it for me. But again, if I release that and I just click back to, let's say, component 1, you just need to be that little bit careful, because you might spend a little while highlighting records, and then all of a sudden you've just taken your fingers off the keyboard, you've clicked on a record, and that highlight follows you around. So it's up to you which one you want to choose for that. You could also apply a filter. So with the filter, I can say, let's just build this one from scratch. If you've not used filters before, really useful tool, and it just adds, I suppose, extra sort of, just that extra sort of flexibility to your reports. So you can apply a filter to hide records, maybe that you don't want to see, or maybe the other one where you want to hide records that you want to keep, so that only those that potentially you want to get rid of are displayed. So for instance, I could go into filter, and I'll just clear that again, and I could say where, and you choose your field. Now you could base that on just about anything, so any of the sort of fields within a record. So I'm going to choose quantity and stock. Now I can scroll down, you can see there's loads of the options there. If you know what it is you're after, so I know it's called quantity and stock, I just press the letter Q, it'll jump down. And if I keep pressing Q, it'll start cycling through the ones beginning with Q. Let's just go back to, like, say A, or let's choose another letter, F. It just jumps down the list. So if you know what it's called, great. If your mouse is a bit sensitive, a bit like mine, it's quite a good idea to use that. So I've got where quantity and stock, and I'm going to go is not, or I'm going to say is equal to. I'm going to say 0. So what I'm looking for all of the records that have got nothing in stock. So potentially they're the ones I can get rid of. I mean, if you've got things like fashion seasons and things like that because of your type of record, then again, you could base it around something else. So you might use things like stock categories. So you might say where the stock category is equal to, and list a certain one, and it will list the records that meet that criteria. But what I'm after is quantity and stock is equal to 0. Now, if I apply that, what I'm then left with, if we look down this quantity and stock column, it's just the ones that have 0. Sometimes you might want the other way, where you think, well, actually, I'll just hide the ones with 0. So you'll go into the filter and you'll say is not equal to 0. And then what you're left with is the reverse. So everything that has a quantity in stock is then listed. But let's say I wanted to try and get rid of anything that's got a quantity in stock of 0. Now, it might not be all of them, but let's just say it is. So we're going to say is equal to 0. I'll apply that, close. So we've got all the ones with nothing in stock. And then what I could do is I could go down and I could highlight them. I could do Control A to highlight everything, or I can just, with nothing selected, I can click swap. It reverses the selection. You might reverse that selection and then think, well, actually, I don't want to get rid of that one, or that one, so I'll just take the highlight off that one. But much easier than me going down that list and say that one, and then this list, the rest of them, and sitting there highlighting them all. Now, with that selection done, I can click delete. So are you sure? I do get that message because I know it's not possible that it's going to delete all of them. So we'll just OK. And did it get rid of any of them? I'm not sure. Well, potentially, if they meet that criteria, then potentially it would delete those records. Let's clear that for the time being. Now, just so I don't get confused myself, I'm going to switch that sort of list selection style back to the Sage method. So tools, options, environment, and I'm going to set that back. I think if you use Sage for quite some time, you tend to be biased towards the 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 Sage selection style, the on-off method, as opposed to the Windows one. Sarah, you mentioned there, how do you change the date of a stock transaction? You can't. One of the limitations of the stock area is that you can't edit transactions. If you've done that, then there's a number of options for you. It depends what impact it has and how, I suppose depends on the reports that you run as well. I'll try and pick that one up a little bit later for you, Sarah, because it doesn't really necessarily directly relate to what we're covering. So I'll come back to that one. So a number of ways to make your selection prior to clicking delete. But again, that message, when it's saying we can't delete because of, you get those 5 messages or those 5 options. Right, let's go back to the slides. So bearing in mind that having a quantity in stock or having transactions against a record would prevent you from deleting records, you've got 2 options in your software. One is to clear stock transactions, which is a bit like clearing your audit trail transactions, but this time it gets rid of them from your stock records. And then we've also got the option to delete the records themselves once they meet that criteria. Now, the difference with clearing stock transactions compared to clear audit trail is that clearing stock transactions, although you specify a date, you're not restricted as to what date you can clear them up to. So if anyone attended the clear audit trail, where we're getting rid of like invoices and bank payments and receipts and journals, you're restricted on that one. You've got to enter a date prior to the start of whatever your current financial year is. But with clear stock transactions, you can specify just about whatever date you want. Obviously, it's not recommended you do a future date, but potentially you can enter any date you want. Now, you will be prompted to back up as part of this process. And there are considerations, and I'm going to try and demonstrate this one a little bit later on. So there are reporting considerations. And if you run things like the retrospective product valuation report, then clearing stock transactions is not really something I would recommend. And I'll try and give you a demo as to why that's the case a little bit later on. Right, let's go back to my screen. We'll run through the deleting of stock or the clearing of stock transactions. Right, so I'm just going to take an example, and if we just take a look at this one here. So this one here, it says there's nothing in stock for this item. And if I view the activity, you'll see we've got 3 transactions. So we've got an adjustment in an AI, which is dated 1st of December 2024. And then we've got 2 goods out transactions, so GO transactions. So one dated the 19th of December and one dated the 23rd. Now, when we come to clear our stock transactions, and what I'll do is I'll do up to the end of December 2024. So in theory, all of these are dated before that date. Now, as long as the essentially the transaction is flagged as having been fully used, and it's dated before the date we specify, it will remove it. So goods out transactions, doesn't matter about that one. It'll just look at the date of that transaction. Is that transaction dated before the date you specify, on or before the date you specify? If it is, it'll clear it. But any in transactions, so there's quite a few of those, goods in, an adjustment in, movement in. There's a number of those inward transactions, but you can see the in transactions, quantity of 2 when it was adjusted in, and it says the quantity of that one used is 2. So this one is essentially, that's fully flagged as being used. If it's got anything less than the in value, so let's say it was 1 or 1.5, it means it's not fully used, and therefore that transaction will not be cleared. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and we're going to clear the stock transactions, or run through the wizard, just to try and get rid of these transactions. So we're going to do up to the end of December 2024. So into tools, period end, and you've got the clear stock and delete stock. So clear stock is for the removal of transactions. So we just get yes to that prompt. Now again, this is a little bit different to the clear audit trail. Clear audit trail, you entered the date and it did that across the board for all of your customers, your suppliers, your nominal codes, and your bank records. So any transactions that met the criteria, they'd be cleared. You couldn't say just do it for this customer or that supplier or this bank account. You can't do that. But with the stock side, a little bit different. You can either do it for all, or you can choose which ones you want to clear it for. Now, if I click that option, it would then say, right, select your records. And again, this is where you can maybe apply a filter beforehand or do a quick search. So this search option is exactly the same as the filter option. I think it's the one area of the software where it's still called search rather than filter, but it brings up the same, potentially the same screen. Right, now if I just cancel out of that for a moment, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, right, I want to do it for all of my records. Specify the date. So we were going to do up to the end of December 2024. Remember, it's up to and including. So it includes the date that you specified. And then we would just click clear stock. Prompts me to take a backup. So I'm just going to accept the file name. Obviously, I can change that if I want to. And I'm just going to back that up to my desktop. Now, at this stage, the only thing I need to tick there for this type of backup is data files only. Doesn't matter about the other options at this instance. So we'll just OK that. A little bit of a progress bar. Obviously, the more records you have, the more transactions you've got, the longer that's going to take. Pretty quick on mine. It tells me the backup's been successful. And then tells me clearing stock up to this date, it's finished. Again, pretty rapid on mine, especially instantaneous, because there's next to nothing in my company. It's a tiny set of data I'm using. With yours, if you get a progress bar, just let that run through. So I just OK that. And that's it done. Now at that point, I think I might not want to get rid of any records. But let's say I go back to products and services. We'll have a look at this one that had the 3 transactions on. If we have a look at the activity, and you'll see that that activity has now been removed. Obviously, if I had entered a date which split those transactions, then it would mean basically I'd still have maybe the last transaction or the last 2 transactions listed. But the ones that meet that criteria, they've been removed. So this record in theory now is in a position where I can get rid of it. So again, I could just do that manually if I wanted to just go down and select the ones I want to get rid of. Or alternatively, we can go now back into the tools option. Now I'm just going to pop back to the slides for a moment. So the second part of that wizard is to delete the stock records. So again, you would access it in exactly the same way. You've got the 2 tabs when the wizard launches. Normally, you'd probably run one immediately after the other. Again, you'll be prompted to back up as part of that process. And again, you can either manually select the records or you could swap and delete. But you get that start scan option. Now, when you click start scan, it will run through the records and say, right, these are the ones that we can get rid of. So it'll identify them for you. You can then make a selection from that if you want to. So let's just quickly run through that one. Pop back to my screen. So into tools at the top, period end, and delete stock. So it's the second tab, obviously, stock transactions on the first tab, but it's the second one we're after this time. So it tells us this option permanently removes stock records from your product list, and stock records can only be removed if, and it's telling us, must have no transactions, must be not part of a bill of materials, come on to that one in a few minutes, and not have an order or an allocated quantity. So we'll click Start Scan. Again, it prompts me to back up. I'll just quickly do that. Tells me it's been successful. And what it's done, it's identified one record that it can get rid of. Now again, if it had identified loads and I think, right, well, just want to get rid of a lot of them, I can click swap to highlight everything, or we can go down and highlight the ones that we want to get rid of. So if I click that one, click OK, tells me it's got rid of it. Go back to products and services, and you'll see it's disappeared from the list. Right, let's just switch that filter off. If you do use filters, you've got this little toggle button to switch the filter on and off. So that filter in the background, the one that says where quantity is 0, if I switch it on, it hides the one where we do have a quantity and quantities in stock. Switch it off and back to that full list. Again, you might reverse that and you say where quantity in stock is greater than 0 or not equal to 0, and therefore it would show you the ones that do have a quantity in stock. Depends which way you want to filter that. So nice and easy to get records using that wizard. Just makes it does make it a little bit quicker, that one. Right, I'm going to pop back to the slides for a moment. So those 5 errors that you're likely, or messages that you're likely to get as part of that information. Items still in stock is an obvious one. You can't get rid of something if there's something in stock. And if there's something in stock, it means it still has transactions. You might have records that have nothing in stock, but they do have transactions on the activity. So a bit like that first one we looked at with the 3 transactions. Can't get rid of that while it has transactions on there. So you've got to clear them stock transactions. 3, 4, and 5. Let's quickly pick up on those ones. And I've got some examples I can show you as well. Now 3, 4, and 5, you're only going to ever get these if you're on the professional level of the software, because number 3, it refers to possible subcomponents. So that relates to the bill of materials option. So either the record itself has a bill of materials, or it is a subcomponent, which means it's included as a subcomponent of a bill of materials of another product. Again, it will not let you get rid of a record while it's in that position. Number 4, stock codes have allocations. So if you use the sales orders option and you've got a product included and you've placed that on order, even though that record might have nothing in stock, no transactions, it will not let you get rid of it while it's in that position. And similar for option 5, stock codes are on order. So that relates to the similar option, but for purchase orders. Let's have a quick look at those so you can track that down. So back to my screen. Right, so first of all, obviously I am on the professional level. So option 3 was, it's not going to let you get rid of it while it has a bill of materials. So this one here at the top, if I go into the record, bill of materials, and it lists SC1, SC2, SC3 as components of this one. So I can't get rid of this record while it has a bill of materials. I need to basically come in and remove them all. Now to remove them all, just highlight them, start pressing F8, gets rid of them, and that's it. So if I quickly do that one, So I'll just do F8, F8. I'll leave number 3 on there for the time being so I can show you what it looks like from the other end. I'll just save that. And if we go into component 3, go into the bill of materials, it doesn't list anything because SC3 itself doesn't have a bill of materials, but it is linked. So it's included as a component of one other product. So it's in link level 1. You might find that's a lot higher than that if you've got an item which is a component of a number of bill of materials from different products. So again, that needs to be 0 for me to be able to delete that. And easiest way to get rid of it, go back to the main item again, which was this one. Into the bill of materials, I'll just F8 on that one to get rid of it, save those changes, close out. And if I now go back to component 3, bill of materials, you'll now see it says 0. So activity, nothing on there. Details, nothing in stock. So potentially I should be able to now delete these ones. So that one, that one, that one, and this one. I'll just do it manually this time. They're gone. So nice and easy. Right, now the message number 4, or the reason number 4, was stock codes have allocations. So if you've got an item that potentially has an allocation, you can track that down. Just go into the record, and it's this value here, allocated. It needs to be 0. It's part of that criteria. Now, if it's not, what I can do is click on the little plus sign. It will bring up a list of sales orders where this product is allocated to it. Again, because it's sales orders, professional only. So I can see that is in order number 31. So sales order 31. We'll close out into sales orders, find number 31. I can either delete that order, but no longer need it, or I can amend the allocations, take it all off order, unallocate stock, or cancel it, I'll cancel it. Close out. And then if you go back to products and services, back into this one, I've just called sales order item, and you'll now see the allocated is 0. Click on the plus, doesn't do anything because there's nothing allocated anywhere. And it also means that now I should be in a position to, again, delete that one. Which it has. The final part of the warning was stock codes are on order, which refers to purchase orders. So I've got one set up here, which if you go into the record, you can see the on order is 1. So again, it needs to be 0 to allow me to delete that product record. So again, sorry, if I want to find out which one it's linked to, I can click on, I can see it's order number 42. So I'll just close out into purchase orders, find number 42. There it is there. Might just be an old order that you've placed on order at some point, you've never done anything about it. So we can see it's got that item on there. What we want to do is take it, you can either delete the order or take it off order. So if I amend deliveries, and I'll just click off order at the top. Obviously I could have at the same time, I could have just deleted the order. It would do the same thing. It would remove that status from the product record. So back into the product record one last time. Nothing in stock, nothing allocated, nothing on order. Bill of materials completely blank, 0, 0 at the bottom. And of course, if I go into activity, there's nothing there either. So it should mean we're in a position to delete this record. So we'll highlight it, click delete, yes to that, and again, it's gone. Any questions so far? Now that is clearing stock and deleting records, and that pretty much in a nutshell, that one. Some of those, it's probably very unlikely that you're going to come across them. So things like bill of materials, it's not a massively used area of the software by any stretch of the imagination. Get very, very few questions on it. How well it's used, I couldn't honestly say, but it's in professional only. So if you're on essentials or standard, the only reason that you're not going to be able to delete a record is that either you've got an item in stock, it's got a quantity and stock value, or it's got history against it. So they're the only two reasons on essentials or standard level. What I want to quickly do is mention a little bit about alternatives. So this is something that Laura is going to be covering in a lot more detail. She'll be covering a lot more detail. I think it's on Monday when she's covering inactive records. Great little feature if you've never used it before, inactive records. Just a case of going into the record and essentially ticking the inactive checkbox. You save the record. As long as it meets the criteria, it'll enable you to flag that. And it means that you can hide records and go through this process without having to remove all information. So let me try and demonstrate this one to you. Again, as I say, Laura will be taking you through in detail next week. So if I went into a record, let's just pick on this one. It's got nothing in stock at the moment. Go into it. And I tick the little checkbox, inactive. When I save it, as long as it meets the criteria, it would let me flag it as being inactive. If it doesn't, it'll give me the message. Try a different one. So double click that one. Flag it as being inactive, tick the box, click save, and it just gives me a blank record. So this one's now flagged as being inactive. Now, the other thing you can do, just to save yourself a little bit of time, is if you click swap, if you're on standard or the professional levels of software, you've got this batch changes option. Now, what this does when you click batch changes is it'll bring up a blank record for me, almost like a skeleton of a product record. And the fields that are active are the ones that I can change, but it includes the inactive box. So I could tick that, click save. It'll say you've chosen to make changes to multiple records. Do you want to save changes? So yes to that. It does come up with a message. Not all of the products could be set as being inactive. So I'll just okay that. But some of them have been. So I'll just clear the highlights. You can see some of them have a Y in that inactive column. And in case some of you are thinking, well, hold on a minute, what's going on there? Why are some products in red? It's just below because the quantity in stock has fallen below the reorder level. That's all that relates to. Nothing else, nothing specific other than that. Now, with these flagged in red, and if I scroll down, you'll probably see is there any more of them? Or just those ones? So with them in red and got a Y, sorry, nothing to do with them being red, with them having a Y in that inactive column, what I can do here is I can just take the tick out of this box at the top where it says include inactive. Take the tick out of those, and any that are flagged as being inactive are now hidden from my list. they're still there in the background. So if you're thinking about maybe, well, actually I don't want to delete records, I'd rather just try and hide them. So they're still there if needed. So things like customers, like haven't bought anything for you in years, but you want to keep them on your database, but you don't want to necessarily delete them. You could flag them as being inactive. You get these little toggle buttons. So if I want those ones back that I've flagged as being inactive, just tick the box, I can see them again. So it's just another way of filtering your list. So it's a good alternative to using a filter as well, that one. Right, now if you've got any questions for me today, been really quiet on the question front today. If you want to quickly pop them in there, I'll try and pick them up in just a moment. Remember, you can download that handout while you are on, and you will receive your follow-up email in around about an hour's time. So if you need a bit of a recap on what we've covered, it'll just watch out for that one. Loads of webinars coming up for Sage 50 accounts and Sage 50 payroll. If you use Sage 50 payroll, obviously we're fast approaching payroll year end here in the UK. So we've got loads of webinars that are booked now, planned for that. So have a look, get yourself signed up. For Sage 50 accounts, our timetable currently runs up to the end of March. Again, take a look, get yourself registered. If you can't attend the sessions, we always make recordings available. Right, still don't have any questions, so I'm going to thank you for attending now. Many thanks for coming along. Hope you enjoyed that one. A bit more of an unusual one, that one. We don't run that session very often, although we are repeating it next week, I think. But we don't run it very often because it's one of those areas that it's not a lot of, you don't find a lot of use in that area. But it's something, if you're finding your software is running maybe a little bit slower, you've got those records, you think, I just don't need that information in my software anymore, then you can follow that through and hopefully you'll see a bit of an improvement. Right, as usual, little survey to complete. If you can do that as you exit the webinar, be greatly appreciated. It should take you about a minute max. Let us know what you thought. Also, thoughts and ideas for topics you'd like to see covered going forward. Least we can do is, or the worst we happens is we don't run it, but get it suggested otherwise. Always looking for ideas. Your follow-up email will be with you in an hour's time. Once again, many thanks. Hopefully I'll see you again on some other sessions very soon.